In this episode, Manny and Tyler talk about an incident that happened in Fraser Valley, British Columbia, while on a multi-sport adventure, which included a kayak, rafting, and climbing trip in July of 2024. There were many reasons why this particular incident occurred, but I'll let Manny and Tyler tell the story from here. I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, thanks actually for having us. My name's Manuel Cabrera, but my friends call me Manny. I live in beautiful Squamish, British Columbia, Canada, and I am a strength and conditioning coach. So I spend a lot of my time coaching others and kind of giving my energy and my time to others on how to do things. And I spend a lot of time coaching, in particular, rock climbers in Squamish for strength and for rehab and things like that. So that's actually a little bit important for the story later on. But this incident happened in Fraser Valley, BC. We were on our way to a kayaking and rafting trip for our mutual friend Darcy.
And my name's Tyler Daly. I am a HVAC and refrigeration technician. I live in Langley, British Columbia, so kind of close to Squamish. I like to rock climb and snowboard and stuff like that, so I'm up in Squamish almost every weekend, every second weekend. And the incident happened on the July long weekend, and we were heading up to go kayaking. And then to wrap up the weekend, we ended up doing some climbing, and that's kind of when things took a turn for the worse. And yeah, Manny's going to start off with how things got going.
Yeah, so the story has, I think, quite a few layers, and it was a really interesting story because what happened was that Tyler and I, we were invited out to a mutual friend's birthday. We were going to go rafting and kayaking for the weekend, and it was Canada Day long weekend. So it was pretty hot outside that weekend. We had a great time kayaking and rafting, but Tyler and I had actually never met before that weekend. And it was only coincidental that we got to carpool together from Langley, BC out to, it was the Chilliwack River, right, Ty?
Boston Bar. So we went out to the Nahatlatch River.
That's what it was, Nahatlatch River. That's right. And it was a 2-hour drive from his place to where we were going. And it felt like 20 minutes. I mean, Ty and I just hit it off right away. And we were just complete friends from the first moment, and an instant bond and trust.
Oh, that's great. Bromance.
Yeah, no, and it was kind of a classic romantic evening. You know, we talked about anything from girls to silly jokes and all sorts of stuff. And, you know, with our passions for the outdoors and recreation, I'm a martial artist. I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Manny loves rugby and stuff like that. So there was this instant connection. And yeah, I kind of fueled the energy for the rest of the weekend. And you guys will see how
there was even moments of like vulnerability, like just kind of like, hey, this is the the crap that we went through, and it was a bond. It really was a bond. But anyway, so we had a great weekend. We went kayaking and rafting and everything. And even though it was a long weekend, as self-employed, as a coach, I don't really get those days off, those holiday days off. So I had to come back the Sunday, and I was coming back with Ty, and on the way back, the plan was to stop at a crag in Fraser Valley called the Bluffs, and we were just going to do some climbing there and wait for our friends to catch up behind us and meet us there afterwards. Ty, what do you think that day was? 35 degrees Celsius, maybe more?
Yeah, it was definitely a hot day, and we were getting there kind of just past probably 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we were arriving at the heat of the day. I think in a way, because this was our first climb, it kind of felt maybe a little bit rushed. We were
together.
Yeah, exactly. It was our first climb together, and we're excited. We had just realized that we had a lot in common. I personally had realized that I was getting to climb with somebody who had quite a bit more experience than I did when it comes to skill level and everything. So I was right out of the get-go very excited. And the plan is we were going to get 1 or 2 climbs in the heat and then go find the shade.
Yeah, exactly. And, we had talked a little bit about climbing, and our mutual friend is a raft guide, and he is probably the best raft kayak guide that I've ever had the opportunity to go down a river with, because he is,
Oh, nice.
yeah, like as a professional coach, you know, I have a master's in coaching. Like I've been academically taught kind of what are the green flags of a great coach. And this guy kind of hit all of them. And because he was so on top of safety and so on top of coaching, and I knew that him and Tyler had basically grown up together, my assumption with when climbing was that, oh, he picked up his skills and understanding of climbing from Darcy. And which means that, you know, I trust Darcy. I know Darcy's there. And I trust Tyler for that reason. And that was definitely a big break from work for me. Like I mentioned, I spend a lot of time coaching other people. So I personally just clocked out and was like, I'm not going to coach anyone here. I need to take a break from work. I just want to go and have some fun and just kind of enjoy.
Work-life balance. This is your break. But it's hard to separate that, isn't it?
It definitely is. It definitely is, especially when it's like your passion. It's what you believe you do so well. And sometimes what other people kind of expect from you or want to receive from you, right? So yeah, so we went to this crag to go climb. There was no guidebook out for it yet, which was interesting. It was coming out in a couple months after the accident happened.
Yeah, that's right. I think it came out, 6 months or something like that after it happened. And it was...
So no beta on the climb.
No, we went to the crag, like the crag.com online, the forum there to check out for beta. And on there, somebody had posted, you know, we had come up to one of the walls. I forget the name of the wall. I forget the name of the climb. But it was like this 5'9" crack dihedral slab. It was super easy. It had a lot of surfaces that you could kind of walk up on. And it was just like a hand jam party all the way up. And online, the beta said that the climb goes on a 60-meter rope on stretch, right? So we had our 60-meter rope out in front of us, unraveled, ready to go. We also had a 70-meter rope in the corner tied up. And I remember distinctly looking at that 70-meter rope and being like, we're fine. We're okay. You know, we'll be on stretch. No big deal. We don't need the 70-meter rope, right?
What do you mean by on stretch? Just like rope stretch?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So that means that like
Okay.
if it ever says like 60 meters on stretch or 70 meters on stretch, it means that the length of the rope is just barely enough able to make it with a little bit of stretch add. So if you're hooked in, if you're tied in and your belayer's tied in, you're probably just gently being pulled up a little bit, you know?
Right, you have to like walk closer to the wall to get a little bit more feet to belay your partner down. I understand now. Okay, thanks.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, and it just as soon as you brought up the 70-meter rope, like I have ran through this so many times in my head. Obviously, after it happened, it was just like, man, there was a 70-meter rope right there. Like, what were we thinking? You know, like, and just after reading it on a stretch and you know, having Manny there with me, I'm just like, you know what? I still feel the confidence that he's feeling. So you know what? I have faith in my belay skills. Okay, we can make this happen, right? And you know, as he started to climb, he's making it look easy, and I don't have a lot of experience craft climbing, so I'm just like, oh, this is great. You know, I got somebody setting up a route.
You got a rope gun.
And yeah, and I'm exactly, and I'm gunning, and I'm casually watching the halfway point go up the wall. And, you know, this is where I should have stopped. I should have said, hey, Manny, I think we got a problem here. And that's kind of where things started to go wrong, is I didn't take the responsibility to stop the situation and say, hey, we're running out of rope here and you're nowhere near the top. I think we need to reassess what's going on. So Manny got to the top. And I said, hey, like, it's going to be quite the stretch. He goes, okay, well, you know, that's fine. You'd set up the anchor. Everything looked good. Everything was locked in. So I started lowering him down on a gree, and he got 10 feet from the ground, 12 feet from the ground.
What I remember is that, so yeah, we were climbing. And before we even started climbing, the reason it's important to mention how hot it was is because, and I was so confident, possibly arrogant, that I took my helmet off before I even started climbing. I had it on and I took my helmet off and I'm like, I'll be fine. This is just a warm up. This is super chill. No big deal. It's a crack climb. There's no way that I'm going to slip or anything. And I started to climb. And like he mentioned, it was going smoothly. some of the rock was a little fragile near the top. No big deal. I just kind of knocked on it, pulled off whatever needed to be pulled off, made it to the anchor. And then he started lowering me. And we kind of get to a point where he stops and he looks up at me and he's like, hey, man, there's not a lot of rope left. Right. And I look down at him. And at this point, I'm fully weighting my harness, like completely nothing's on the wall. And which means the gree is fully locked in. And I look down at him and I'm like, okay, like no big deal, man. Just lower me as much as you can and I'll down climb the rest. No big deal. We'll come back. We have the 70-meter rope there. We know Rhea and Darcy are on their way. We can go back and clean our gear afterwards. No problem. So what went through my head was that I remember looking down at him. And as I slowly start facing back towards the wall, in the corner of my eye, I see Ty undoing the knot at the end of the rope, which is, like, first of all, like a no-go. Like, you don't ever want to do that, right? But in my head, I was like, oh, he's just undoing the knot. I see there's maybe like 2 feet of rope left beyond the knot, in the tail.
What do you mean at the end of the rope? Oh, so he tied a safety knot at the end of the rope on the other side of his gree.
It was attached to a rope bag. So like it was put through a rope bag with our, so I could get as much rope as I could.
Yeah, exactly. So that knot is meant to stop like a ground fall in case something were to happen, right? It's a stopper knot, exactly. So I saw him undoing it and I figured he's just trying to get whatever left, rope is left on the other side of the tail. And then I assumed he was going to redo the knot, right? Now, the thing with the gree is that I like to when I coach people, I try to tell people that the gree is not death proof, it's idiot proof, right? And not that I'm calling Tyler an idiot, right? We were both idiots that day. We both made mistakes. I took my helmet off. I should have coached him before I started even climbing. I should have kind of just like gone through with things like I usually do with first-time climbers, like how they belay and things like that. And I decided not to because I wanted a break from coaching. And I was what's the word? I was
complacent.
Oh, what's the complacent? Thank you. That's the word.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was completely complacent. And I see him undo the knot. I look back to the wall and I'm just waiting for him to start lowering. And then all of a sudden I just fall and I realize that I'm falling. And it was one of those moments where you don't think that anything's going to go through your head, except it really did. Something did go through my head. And all that went through my head was remembering what the ground looked like. And I remember in my head being like, oh, the ground is flat. Put your feet underneath you. And that was kind of the first action that I did that probably saved my life. And as I was falling, I was able to place my feet underneath me. I landed essentially kind of like in a deep squat position. And the magnitude of the force was just so high that my butt still came down and hit a flat rock on the ground.
Yeah.
And I knew something went wrong when I hit that rock, but I didn't know at the time. But this is one of the many reasons why I will personally never be able to blame Tyler. It was both of our faults because he saved my life that day unintentionally. I had fallen right in front of him and he placed his hands behind me. He saw what was happening. He placed his hands behind me and he stopped me from rolling backwards. And when I got up, I realized that there was a sawed off log at least a foot in diameter right where my head would have landed. And my brain would have been split in two if it hadn't been for Ty. Oh. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And I hit the rock. I jump up. I realize something's wrong. I'm in immense pain for, I don't know, Ty, you tell me. I felt like the pain happened for maybe 10 to 30 seconds and then it was gone.
Yeah. It seemed like there was a brief moment where, you hear about this when anyone gets into any accident, there's like a 5-second delay. And then it probably lasted, like you said, about 10, 15 seconds where you felt the pain and then you kind of, I guess, reestablished your threshold again and were able to kind of collect yourself. Yeah. I obviously made a lot of mistakes that day. And this has haunted me for a long time. For a really long time. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see what happened, and yeah, it was just hard because I was just like, I almost killed this person, and I made the mistake that they tell you on like the first day of belaying is keeping that right hand or that brake hand on the rope at all times, and I didn't do that.
I could see, Tyler, that you're getting emotional, and it's been a while since this accident happened, and it seems like you haven't quite forgiven yourself. And I'm really sad. Like, you're making me tear up just seeing how upset you are.
Yeah, it just like I told Manny that day, I was way better than that.
I'm sorry, buddy. We've talked briefly, well, not briefly. We've talked a few times about it and shared the stories with our friends and stuff. And I could tell that it hit him hard, but not as hard as I thought it did. Our friends Ria and Darcy, they came up to me a couple times since then. Were like, it, excuse my language, but it fucked Darcy up. It fucked Tyler up. He still thinks about it and still talks about it. And
that's called a stress injury, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's called a stress injury. What you're dealing with right now, Tyler, is a stress injury. I'm going to be doing a short a mini series on stress injuries and tools to move through them here in a couple months. It's going to be a live event, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, we talk about these physical injuries. We haven't quite gotten there to Manny's. I think Manny started to allude to it a few minutes ago. His physical injury that maybe happened to, I'm assuming, his butt or maybe his back. We haven't gotten there yet, but Manny's dealing with a physical injury in his body from falling however long that pitch was to the ground. And that's what a lot of people look at is a physical injury. But not a lot of people are paying attention to the belayer or the other person who witnessed this, who may or may not have caused this incident. But now you're dealing with this psychological stress injury that is going to be very, very difficult to repair. And I can see that in your face right now, like how emotional you are from being traumatized, that you feel like you were the one reason why this happened, and it's like you're taking responsibility for that. And you already said you've been playing it back in your mind over and over again. So I hope to get when this podcast is over, when we finish recording, I hope to give you a couple of resources that you can access to help you move through these emotions, not trauma.
Thanks, Ashley. I appreciate that.
That's really interesting. That's really nice of you. You said it really well. Like, there was a physical injury that I suffered from, and I knew that Ty had a hard time with it, but I never looked at it as a stress injury. I've never heard that term before. And that's a really interesting term. And I think that applies well to it, because no matter how many times I told Ty, hey man, this wasn't your fault. This is both of our faults. I got complacent. I took my helmet off. I could have used the 70 meter when I looked at it, and I decided not to.
I want to interrupt you right there really quick. And I think you're half right. You could have worn your helmet. You could have done this. You could have done that. But really, you guys created this relationship in the car ride to go kayaking. You created this relationship, right? So you guys have this relationship and this bromance, but essentially this relationship. So you both are responsible for that. Hey, Tyler, hey, Manny, why'd you take your helmet off? Oh, I'm hot. Well, put it back on, buddy. You never know. Hey, hey, Tyler, why are you tying the rope? Oh, shoot. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
Tie it back up. Like, you both are responsible for that as you're in a relationship. When you tie in together, that is a team. You both are responsible. So Manny, I don't agree that you are responsible for all those things. It's both of you. So I know. Sorry to interrupt, but you can go ahead.
No, like you're right. It really is the both of us, right? But and I try to have this conversation with Ty, but I knew that he was holding it heavy. And even before recording with you today, I texted him and I was like, "Is there anything that you don't want me to talk about?" And he's like, "No, man." Like his response was like, "I'm going to take responsibility for everything." And I'm like, I see that it still affects him that way, and I wish it didn't. To this day, we've gone out climbing since then, and we've had tons of fun, and our bromance and our relationship has only grown since then. Our friends and asked us, are you gonna ever climb with him again? Like, this would stop me immediately. Whenever I told the story to people, it'd be like, I would never climb with that person again. They'd be like, absolutely not, definitely not. Like, I'm gonna go climb with this guy the next opportunity I can, because
There's growth there. There's learning.
100% there's growth, and any whether you're looking at an athlete or a friendship or a bromance, the most important thing is not the person's skill but the person themselves, because it's a person themselves that's going to grow to become a better athlete or a better friend, right? It's not the athlete becoming a good person, right? So I knew from the start that Ty was one of the best guys I've ever met. And like to get back to the story, like I had fractured my sacrum, which is one of the thickest and strongest bones in the middle of your hip, and it carries all the weight of your whole body and everything that happens. And very close to your sacrum are massive, massive nerves that not only control kind of your lower body, but also control your ability to go to the washroom and things like that. And I knew this, so I hurt something. In the back of my head, I've broken bones before, and I'm like, something broke. I don't know what, but
You knew it.
I knew it. And I'm like, I want to enjoy the rest of the day. Let me just kind of continue on. And Ty earlier mentioned that he thought it was maybe like a 10-foot fall. But I knew in the moment when it fell that I was going to need to know how tall the fall was. And if there's one thing that I saw while I was falling, and it was my red black diamond cam. And I saw it fall in front of me as I was falling. And that was kind of my landmark. And when I looked up to see where that cam was still in the crack, it was about 20 feet high. It was about 7 meters high. That was my calculation from what I saw. And I went to before I even went to the hospital, we still had like another hour and a half drive, maybe, I don't know, from the Harrison Bluffs.
Yeah, because we're out. Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, like we're kind of up towards Agassiz in the Fraser Valley. So that's kind of, they call it Harrison Hot Springs. We're about a 20-minute drive from there. There's no hospital until I think Chilliwack. So that's probably, like you said, a 45, an hour and a half drive, depending on what's going on.
Yeah. Until we got to his house where I left my car. And I had, at that point, I had to like sit on one side with like a donut under my butt. I couldn't bend over. I couldn't grab things. And I remember, okay, if I can still go to the washroom, that's a really good sign. And if I can still perform a squat is a good indicator of everything working underneath me well. And if I can still perform a squat, then that's a good sign. And I was able to perform a squat just fine. And I stopped at a gas station once I picked up my car to go to the washroom, and I was able to pee just fine. So that kind of like, release some tension for me. I'm like, okay, at least there's nothing wrong that I can tell with my nervous system, which is the important thing. But it was midnight at that point, maybe. It was like pretty late or close. It was night time because I got back to Squamish around midnight. And I'm like, I could either go to a hospital in Langley in Vancouver, or I can just bust my ass all the way back to Squamish and go to a hospital there. And I just kind of just rode with the pain, made it back to Squamish, probably made it to the hospital around 12:30. And I walk into the triage and I told the nurse what happened. And I could see in their face, oh, this guy, he's exaggerating. He probably just has a bruised tailbone. He's probably fine, right? And they take x-rays and they see that I had fractured my sacrum, and it was a significant fracture. And the doctor walks in, and the first thing that comes out of her mouth is, she's like, I want to let you know that this doesn't happen. That to fracture your sacrum takes an immense amount of force. people usually break their tailbone, which is called your coccyx, but your sacrum is something different.
Wow.
She's like, you're lucky to be alive. You're lucky that you have no nervous system injuries or issues. You're lucky that you're going to be able to walk out of this. So I felt grateful for myself, and I felt grateful for my time that weekend with Tyler and climbing and everything. But it was a really long process back. And coincidentally, our friends Rhea and Darcy had arrived, and they had parked. And where they had parked, they could see the wall. You know, they had to still have like maybe a 10-minute approach, but they could see the wall. And they heard me scream at the top of my lungs when I fell. And when they walked in maybe a minute or two after it happened. And they just look at us. They see Tyler's white as a ghost. They see me, and I think they see that I'm just trying to play it cool. And they ask what happened. And I'm like, well, did you hear me scream? And they're like, yeah, we just thought you were just like trying hard, you know? And I'm quite a vocal climber. And I'm like, no, I fell and I'm not doing great, you know? But I didn't say that in front of Tyler. I pulled Rhea off to the side. I'm like, listen, this is what happened. Like, I think I'm in some serious trouble, but I don't want Tyler to know right now because I think Tyler's taking it pretty hard.
Well, and honestly, at that point, like, I wasn't stupid. Like, I saw the fall, and, you know, I didn't take the fall, so I'm not a very good judge of the distance. So for Manny to tell me that I was closer to 20 feet, that's more like oh, fuck, like, you know, I can see why. But at the same time, when it happened, I said to myself, I was like, oh, fuck, like, we're going to the hospital. Like, this is, yeah, like, you know, I was like, what are we doing here? You know, and I was like, obviously, like Manny said, I was in shock at that time, but we spent the rest of the afternoon there, and like, I was kind of hanging my head, just like, what did I do to this, like, awesome human being and everything? And meanwhile, he's toughing it out, and I'm, just feeling guilt for the rest of the afternoon. And then kind of the cherry on top was like, it's like we finally get home, and I'm just like, oh man, like, this guy must hate me. I'm never going to see him again. Like, whatever, you know, now I got to like deal with this, like the backlash, whatever is going to happen. And then I get a call, and it's like, hey, I left my wallet in your truck. And I'm like, oh. And he was like 5-10 minutes down the road, and of course, like, he's still in pain, but he's in this, you know, anyone that knows him, he's in this Manny mood where he's still this happy-go-lucky guy. So, yeah.
I forgot about that. I forgot that I'd called you after I realized I didn't have my wallet, because I thought, shit, I need to pay for gas. Like, I don't have any gas and I need to go home. And he was nice enough to come down and meet me and bring my wallet. And
well, I wasn't going to make you come back, that's for sure.
Yeah. But like, we made it and it was fine. And from a physical injury perspective, like, I'm still dealing with some things. Like, I to tell you the truth, like, I still get some unusual pains down my left leg, and it, you know, it creates some barriers and stuff. But I luckily work at a really fine clinic in Squamish where we have great physiotherapists and chiropractors and other practitioners, and they were able to kind of give me a hand. And I told them to just call me to call me Gandalf, because I was walking around with my Gandalf stick for a few days. But I think a big lesson out of this is, yes, you know, all these things about complacency and what could have gone better. And our friends really supported us. But I was really disappointed with the climbing community as a whole online, which is a slight twist to the story. Because after it happened, we wanted to warn the rest of the climbing community, especially in the Fraser Valley, because the book hadn't been out yet. We knew it was coming out soon. And we wanted to make sure that the beta on this climb was correct. And I had messaged the group on Facebook, the Fraser Valley Climbing Group, and been like, hey, listen, I don't want to share any details about what's going on, because frankly, I don't have the consent of my friend Tyler, and I'm not here to put him in a pit of fire after what happened, because I believe it's both of our faults. It's not just his. And I knew that was kind of the perspective that most people would take without any further context. And I said, this climb on the crag, I can't change what it says. Somebody needs to change it for me because I don't have an account on that website. This climb says it goes 60 meters on stretch. It cannot say that. It has to say 70 meters at least. And this is kind of what happened. And then the comments just started flooding in, being like,
the trolls.
Who was it that you climbed with? Trolls, yeah.
The shaming, the blaming.
Totally. Why wasn't there a safety knot?
That's what my whole podcast is about.
Totally.
My whole podcast is trying to get the culture away from that. Like, how are people supposed to come forward and share their story if people are shaming and blaming everybody? It's never going to work.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? This is something I did want to say today, is that anyone and everyone out there who is a 512 climber, I realize I made a mistake. Okay. And when you guys weren't climbing, 512s, you guys made mistakes too. And I am 100% very fortunate that Manny didn't suffer anything worse than what he did. But I learned from it. You were asked for us to think of 5 things to what we learned and stuff like that. But you can think of 10, you can think of 20. Like, if you break down the whole story, it's just, we got complacent. I got complacent because I was climbing with a more experienced climber. He got complacent because he knows that I climb with our really good friend Darcy. It was a recipe for disaster, but with all the right intentions.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to really describe it. Absolutely.
And
yeah. So. Yeah, and these comments, I just responded by telling people, listen, like, I don't need to tell you what happened or who it was. You just need to know that this beta needs to be changed online. And somebody did go back and change it pretty quickly too. I don't know if it's changed in the climbing in the guidebook that's released now. I really wish I could remember the name of the climb, but it needs to be known that this climb needs to go with a 70 meter. It can't go with a 60. And when I told that to the community, their response first was, hey, tell me more, because I want to know more about this rumor. I want to know more about the goods of the story. It's like, no, you need to know that this climb doesn't go with a 60 meter, and that's it.
I appreciate that.
Well, that's pretty respectful of you, Manny. Yeah, there are a lot of trolls. I mean, I get lots of comments too on some of my my personal accidents and some of the episodes that I posted. And I actually used to go back and delete every single nasty comment just to respect the guest. It's gotten to be a little bit too much for me to do that all the time, but I do still try really hard to manage that, or just turn off the comments. It's hard for me because I really respect the dialogue that comes with each episode. But I just don't appreciate when it becomes nasty, because everybody can have an accident. You could be a 512 climber,
sure.
You could be a 5'5" climber. It doesn't matter what kind of climber you are. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete, you're famous, you're a first time ever indoor climber, outdoor climber, whatever, whoever you are. It doesn't matter.
And mistakes,
and it can happen to anybody. And there's such ego out there, which I'm really trying to shine light on so people can get away from that and create more of an accepting culture of respecting people's incidents and learning from them. It's tough.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I learned it's so, and in your position where you're constantly in the limelight in public, I mean, I could only imagine what you have to go through that, and this was just one small incident between Tyler and I, and I just couldn't believe, like, every time I told somebody this story in person in Squamish, their first response was like, are you gonna climb with that guy again? I would never climb with him again. And I'm like,
that's a terrible thing to say.
No, I'm going to climb with this guy immediately. This is my friend. And
that explains the quick look I get or whatever from some of those people. It's just like, they look at me like, now I know what they're thinking.
Well, shit, like, I learned from people who were better than I too. I surrounded myself purposely with those kinds of people so that I can learn. And I made mistakes as well, right? And like you've mentioned, like, I think especially in a town like Squamish where climbing is so prevalent, and it's world-class climbing, it attracts so many different kinds of climbers. If you don't live in Squamish, you have this idea that everybody in Squamish climbs at least 512, and that's not the case. There's quite a wide variety of climbers here, of all kinds of athletes here, really. But what I do see here, more than I've seen really in any other place, is groupings and cliques of people that, and it's hard to break that barrier to kind of like come into that community and feel like, hey, this is what I want to achieve and this is what I want to do. How do I get to that point? Oh, well, to get to that point, I need some kind of mentorship, or I need friends, really, is what I need. I need friends. And making friends and meeting good people in this area, out of all the places I've lived, not only in this country, but around the world, it's been the most challenging for me. And that is why I will never let go of Ty.
Oh, you hear that, Tyler?
I did. Oh, careful, Ashley. The bromance is picking up here.
We may or may not send each other secret memes almost every single day. But that's the kind of climber, mountain biker, skier, whatever you want to call it, that you need more in this community. And we had an accident. From my perspective, I feel Tyler's the type of individual that we should celebrate and not put down.
Thanks, Manny. Much love, bud.
So let's kind of move into some of the learnings that you both had from this incident.
Okay, sure. I actually kind of just wrote them down for this, just because there were kind of so many running through my mind that it's just, maybe just kind of a few, I guess, right? So we've discussed this kind of throughout the whole podcast already, but communication, there was a definite failure of communication there. We didn't really assess the risks. We didn't really come up with much of a plan. The plan was climb, go up. We didn't really talk about signals or anything like that. Like I know on multi-pitches and stuff like that, since Manny and I have had this accident, like we've been on many climbs, like multi-pitches and stuff like that, where we always have signals. 2 tugs of the rope means this, or, if you can't hear me, we got to do something else, right? So we already talked about this, but we got complacent. Even the best athletes can get complacent and things can become too easy for them, and they forget about the humble beginnings, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. We already said this as well. It doesn't matter the grade that you're climbing. It could be a 5.5, but is it raining? Are you climbing some Chaucy stuff in the Rockies? Anything can happen. Not at the end of the rope.
And keep it there.
And keep it there. And don't be afraid to stop and think about what you're doing. Tell your partner that he needs to stop and you need to assess what's going on, because I think too many times we get caught up in the rush of an exciting event, whether it be some kind of stimulus, external or internal, and we forget what we're doing. And so don't forget to stop and assess the situation.
Thank you for sharing those lessons, Tyler. Manny, did you have any lessons that you learned that were different than Tyler's?
He hit most of them. I mean, for me, I've been climbing for a long time, and I spend a lot of time with climbers, whether it's personal friends or athletes that I coach. And one thing that I've definitely taken away, and it seems so small and so apparent, but it's definitely something that I still continue to see every day. And it's just wear your freaking helmet. Like,
why wouldn't you? Yeah, exactly.
Man. I used to climb, honestly, without a helmet every single day. The only time I threw a helmet on is if it was a trad pitch that I thought was a little spicy, or if I was going on a multi-pitch day. But I spent a lot of time climbing sport and trying to climb hard, and I never wore my helmet. I tried it a couple times. I'm like, no, this is stupid. I feel awkward. I don't feel like I can perform. But at the end of the day, whether you're wearing a helmet and you feel like you can perform or not, that's just the sensation that you get to learn, and you get to change if you need to. And after this incident, I realized one of the reasons I don't wear my helmet is because I think I look stupid. Like, to be honest, I think I look stupid with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if other climbers feel the same. And so I went out and I bought a very expensive helmet, but it was a helmet that I always really wanted to buy because it looked cool. And since then, I've always worn that helmet.
Which
and
helmet is it?
It's a Black Diamond. Damn, what's it called? I forget.
Capitan?
Yeah, it's got a lot of. It's one of those really lightweight ones that's just foam, basically, with very little plastic, and then it has some really cool, like, triangular holes for air on the outside, right? So
so your curls can pop out and stuff. Okay.
I always thought it looked really cool, and I never purchased one. And since I've purchased it, I've retaught myself how to climb and feel comfortable climbing with the helmet. And that was kind of the biggest thing for me. And I told my mom, I'm like, after it happened, I'm like, she's like, did you wear a helmet? And I'm like, no. And she's like, I always tell you to wear a helmet. My ex-girlfriend would always be on me about wearing a helmet, and she was a doctor, and look what happened. Like it. We can ignore those people around us that tell us to do better, but at the end of the day, they're going to be right eventually. So that was the biggest thing for me. And I mean, now when I go climb with somebody, I'm extremely, extremely picky about how they handle the gree-gree. And I've gone through, even before this accident, I've gone through and I've read the Petzl manual book that you can find online if anybody wants to know. You can find it online. It's a very quick read. And I don't accept anybody keeping their hand close to the gree-gree. I always make sure that they keep their hand by their hip. I make sure that they have, instead of just 2 fingers on the handle, that it's their full hand or as much of their hand as they can. Like, these little things is what I look for, and I don't make an excuse for it anymore.
Thank you so much to Manny and Tyler for sharing your story, and thank you for listening to my podcast. Thank you to Rocky Talkie and the American Alpine Institute for sponsoring this episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you want more content, head on over to Patreon to sign up. There are so many bonus episodes that you can learn from exclusive to Patreon supporters. And as always, remember, play hard and be smart.